Go.
Okay. So, like I said, some of the folks on Paul.com and others convinced me to do this talk on how to do a podcast. It's the first time I've ever given, I think, a non-computer security related talk, so I'm actually kind of nervous. But it's basically how we do a weekly podcast, or how you can do a weekly podcast. So a lot of people ask me all the time, they're like, how do you manage to do a podcast every week? How do you manage to do 2 podcasts every week? I do 3 podcasts every week. So they're like, you should give a talk on how to do a podcast. And reluctantly, I was like, yeah, okay. But some of the reasons for me was a lot of podcasts have come and gone. It's a great medium to get your word out there. And I really don't like to see that, so I thought by offering up, how we do it, how we get our act together, or try to every week to do a podcast, and encourage you to create your own podcast. Because it's really not that hard. And I'm going to go through everything from the most completely basic setup that you can do with a USB headset and a laptop, all the way to the setup that I want to build in the future, which is completely ridiculous. Wait till you see it. All right. So then I thought, well, what do you need to do a podcast, right? Well, the first thing you need is an idea. You have to talk about something. You need people, because doing it by yourself, well, we'll get to that. And equipment, software, a schedule is super important, an understanding spouse, I'm still working on that, a website, a podcast cake, always definitely helps. Some other nice to haves, right? Sponsors are nice to have, slogans, logos, custom music, guidelines for content. I think that those aren't requirements, but there's some other things that we have, so I'll include those at the end as well. And the no pooping past this point is related to the guidelines for content, okay? As we tell my talk, no bathroom talk. That's what we tell the talk. We don't actually have that rule on Paul.com. So let's talk about some ideas. This wasn't a very good idea. This is actually from Paul.com episode 150. John Strand came out to my house, and I think that's the same garbage can that we're using over there, which is kind of funny. And we decided to do a keg stand. Now, what this picture doesn't show you is that this light over there was no more after the keg stand. So, one of the many casualties of Paul.com. Another interesting story, we're on camera, oh well. Another interesting story about that podcast was that Larry slept over, and the next morning we were cleaning up in the backyard, and I looked over, and he was standing in my backyard, and he didn't look so good, and he's like all over my lawn. It was not fun. It was pretty fun. I thought it was funny, he didn't at the time. So your podcast should be about something. And try and think about your format, right? I've taken a lot of feedback in the past 8 years about my podcast. And some people come up and say, hey, I love the format. It's this open, relaxed environment, and you're talking about all these different things for a really long time, and it's like a radio talk show, and we think that's great. I get other people that come up to me and they're like, your format sucks, I just want the information. So we actually created a whole new show just for that, so that we can hit the different formats. And I don't think anyone's right or wrong. I truly believe that people consume content in different ways. Some people like the long format where we sit around, we drink beer, we shoot the shit and whatever. But some people just like the immediate gratification of here's 5 minutes of the information security news. I mean, that's why we created Half Naked TV, right? And then we did different segments. So we had these how-to segments. That's really how we separate ourselves out from the other podcasts, and that's something you might want to consider, is doing something different. Listening to the podcasts in the area where you're going to create your podcast is some really good advice for you as well. Because you can do different things, right? We're one of the few ones that actually do how-to segments, for example. Interviews, I think, are really important for pretty much every podcast, whatever your topic is, to bring in an expert. We've had some great interviews, and I'll talk about the people behind the scenes of Paul.com, but interviews are super important because it brings a different perspective, a different audience to your podcast, right? Whoever you're interviewing has an audience of followers, and they're bringing that to your podcast, which is kind of cool. We've done we've done roundtables too. Those are a lot of fun. In fact, I don't know why, but we're planning another huge episode. We're gluttons for punishment. So we want to have 4 roundtables with 5 different guests on each roundtable. So that's a total of 20 guests just for one episode, which is, I don't recommend that. It's kind of funny. Larry was talking to me last night, And he's like, so you're doing a talk on how to podcast? He's like, what, do you just have one slide that says don't? I thought about going with that approach, but I decided to have a few slides. So, pick one run. Trying to decide too, are you going to broadcast live, or are you going to have video? Decide those things up front too, because it helps choosing your equipment and your format a lot easier. All right, so it's nice to have a place to record. We're kind of ridiculous. I built a studio in my basement, and I built a man cave to do my cigar podcast in. I mean, most of you are probably fine at your desks, but as you'll probably find out about me, I'm a little eccentric, and I take things over the top. For example, there's 60 amp sub panels in each of my studios. And my studio in my basement, which is also my office, is soundproofed. So there's insulation in the walls, there's insulation in the ceiling, there's extra thick ceiling tiles, and there's actually soundproofing foam inside of the office as well. Which, as a lot of you know, my wife and I just had our second child, it's about 3 months, and that's where I put him when he wants to cry. So it has dual purpose. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, make sure it's quiet. I mean, that's right. One of the places why I chose to do my podcast in a quiet place is because you don't want background noise like traffic and airplanes or lawnmowers. We had lawnmowers in one episode we did outside. There's a funny story about that I'll tell you later over beers, which involves an argument I got to do with my neighbor. But yeah, so I mean, that's a bit about the place. Pick a place that, again, is quiet is probably the most important thing. Okay, so people, right? I can't do this by myself. The number of people on Paul.com just keeps growing. I don't know why they still want to hang out with me at this point, especially Larry, who was there in episode 1. So this was episode 300. We actually progressed to the point where every 50 episodes or so, we decide to celebrate. It's really just an excuse for us to drink beer. I mean, that's really how Paul.com kind of came about. And now we're at B-Sides, and it's kind of the same excuse that I just wanted to have everyone here so we can have beer together. So everyone raise up your glass, right? Because I like to make excuses to just sit around and drink and talk about security. So that's what Paul.com was about. So we had this episode 300. Everyone came over to my house, and we had a keg party. And it was almost like a mini security conference. I think that's part of what sparked Patrick and I were like, maybe we should have like a real security conference. So we're trying. But episode 350, we're going to try and schedule in October. It's going to be like a small invite-only little security conference. So that's kind of fun too. So sometimes when you try and take pictures of all the people on your podcast, someone photobombs it. Does anyone know RenderMan? That's the person, anyone? RenderMan? He's done a lot of wireless research. He has the longest arms out of anyone I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, look at the wingspan, right? I mean, the picture doesn't do it justice, but he's gonna like take off. So, yeah, those are some of the people. And if the people on your podcast want to bring sock puppets, I mean, you should really question your moral and your values and their mental stability. Wait till my slide about you tomorrow, you're really going to hate it. That's the nice one.
You'll be on someday too if you're lucky.
That's right. It says it to me all the time. So you can do it by yourself if you want to, but people just may grow tired of hearing just you. It's tough to really bounce ideas off of yourself. The tricky part is, right, there's no one to motivate you to record. I mean, a lot of the times when I'm having a tough week and I'm like, I gotta do a podcast, I'm like, well, I have to because I can't let anyone down that has planned to be here, kind of thing. And also, if you're gonna do it by yourself, there's a lot of planning, recording, post-production. It's a lot of freaking work to do a podcast by yourself. So some of the things about the people, right, podcasting outside is nice. We've done a lot of those. That's Darren and Mike up there. I did at one time try to stop using podcast as a verb. I gave up on it. It hasn't worked out. So I'm going to use it as a verb rather. Getting together at cons is fun. However, doing a podcast from a remote location at a conference is really difficult. There's just a lot of logistics. We've done it before. I try and not do it anymore despite Mike's persistence and suggesting it. I still try and say no because at a conference there's a lot of things going on and it's really hard. Okay. So down to the people, this slide is all of the people that represent Paul.com. And you can see there's a lot more names up there than just me. Even though it was ridiculous and put my name in the title of the podcast, it's not all about me. So we've got a lot of regular hosts, Larry, Jack, John, Carlos, and Allison. Jack and Allison are here. Raise your hand. Well, everyone knows Jack. You can't miss his beard. And then the interns, the first couple people here, Patrick and Rob. Where's Rob? Rob's in the back. Are interns for Paul.com. Recently I started kind of an informal internship program. If you come help us out with the podcast, we'll teach you about computer security. That's kind of the general rule of thumb. Unfortunately, there are no open intern slots, because if I take on another intern, well, my wife will kill me even more than she wants to kill me, but I don't have the cycles for that many interns. So if we add some more people, maybe in this column, to help out with the interns, we can add more. But our interns tend to go on and do great things and move on very quickly. I know, where's Mike? Mike started out as an intern. Mike's now the executive producer for Paul.com and works for a penetration testing company. When Mike started, he was just getting started in his information security career, so Mike definitely moved up through the rankings. We just won't let him go on the executive producer side because he does too good of a job. So you're stuck with that role, Mike. I'm sorry. Mike manages all the guests for Paul.com. I'll put out certain challenges to him. He meets probably most of them. I mean, I wanted a couple of people that were way, the president, okay. I mean, that was a stretch. The director of Homeland Security, that was another one. I'm still waiting for that one. Get on that. Bruce Schneider, Dan Gear, Dan Kaminsky, the list of big names in computer security. Mike reins them in and gets them on the show, which is awesome. I have an audio engineer now, and Steve's been working for me for a little over a year. And that's been awesome, because the worst part of the job of podcasting is actually editing the audio. It's horrible. So I hired someone to do it, who is actually a professional audio engineer, so that when he edits the audio, it sounds way better than when I do it. So Steve's great. Steve Ryan is here. Where's Steve Ryan? He's not here. He's not back yet. Oh, he is here. Okay, did you feed my meter? Yeah, thank you for that. He's like, no, I didn't. So Steve is the live audio video production engineer, and has to deal with me yelling at him every Thursday night because something's not working. We love Steve for that. He takes it in stride. Everyone should have an evil persona. We call ours Bob. Basically one day we were doing the podcast and we're saying, well, I kind of did this thing that may be illegal on a lot of different levels, federal, state, international, violation of Geneva Convention. And my friend was like, my wife's a lawyer and you probably shouldn't do that. You should put that stuff into a third person, call it Bob. And we're like, yeah, that's great, we'll call it Bob. So Bob is our evil persona and comes on the show every once in a while. A good buddy of mine, White Bucket, does our mailing list and IRC as well. So when you post to our Paul.com mailing list, all the approvals go through White Bucket. And we have an IRC channel that he manages as well. So those are all the people, man, and my hat's off to those people because there wouldn't be a Paul.com without all the people on that slide. All right. As much as I love all of the people on Paul.com from the bottom of my heart, the complete polar opposite of that, I hate the equipment with a passion. Because you know why? It never works. Well, when it does work, it's nice, but that's usually the exception, not the rule. And so I went to the CCDC event. There's someone here that was at the CCDC event, and they actually have professional audio people. And anytime I can get in front of them professional audio people, they kind of hate it because I just pepper them with questions the entire time. And they give me a lot of great tips, some of which you'll see in here. They're from when the CCDC had the event. And he told me, you really get what you pay for. And that it couldn't be more true with audio equipment. If you buy crappy audio equipment, you're gonna sound like crap. Am I right, Adrian? Adrian does, audio video stuff too. Would you agree with that statement?
I've bought many a thing which I should have spent the extra $10 on.
There you go. So, I'm gonna go through some of the setups. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can set up your podcast. I'll give you some history, basically, on our podcast, where we've been from episode 1 all the way to the current episode, all the way into what I want to build next. I'll talk about basic, advanced, and some studio setups. I have to say though, my PV-PV10 mixer is a workhorse. I mean, this thing's been thrown around, kicked, beer spilled on it, outside podcasting in the cigar studio, and this thing just refuses to die. It was kind of pricey. It was $250, and I'll tell you where you can spend your $250 probably on a better mixer. But I mean, that thing is just a workhorse. You'll see it in all the pictures going back to like 2006. So, you know, it was a pretty good investment. That's one piece of equipment I don't hate all the time, just some of the time. Right, this was Paul.com episode 1, October 2005 in Los Angeles at a SANS conference. I decided, hey, we should do this podcast thing. I started listening to some podcasts. This is in like the podcast heyday, right? Like everyone was producing podcasts. Leo Laporte in This Week in Tech was just getting, they had been doing it for maybe a year before this point. So I'm like, well, you know, let's do one. Let's do it. So we had some of the critical components like beer. That's important, right? Because without beer, things just don't go so well. Which is why we have beer here today, and it's going pretty well, I think. So we can thank beer for that. I had a laptop, which was my first Mac actually, and I think Larry is still using it. I sold it to Larry after that, and his daughter still uses it, which is awesome. We had this little microphone. That was our one microphone for the entire podcast. It's kind of a funny story. This gentleman here, who I can't reveal his identity, just you get to see the back of his head. But we recorded another episode out there, and he was wearing the headphones, and we had that little crappy microphone. And a little ways through the interview that we were doing, he takes the headphones off, and when we're done, I'm like, dude, why just take the headphones off? He said, well, I couldn't hear you guys. So, I mean, that was a difficult recording to edit. Yeah. And I did have one earbud that I was monitoring the show with. Okay, so that was episode 1. We grew from there. 2006, it looks like Radio Shack threw up on the table, which is awesome. Kind of fun. 2007, you know, we had lots of laptops, and I'll describe what all those laptops do. But you can see the little PV mixer that we have there, and we have beer, which is important as well. So those are, and we have beer in this one too, which is great. Yeah, so we grew a little bit. We got a little better. This is a little more advanced setup. We got this was 2008. We still have beer, very important, noticing a theme here. We have a soundboard, which is great, so we can inject audio into the show, which you want to do not as much. Like, you don't want to be a radio DJ that is just playing annoying sounds the whole time, but that's how we get the music into the show. We have a live stream at this point, which is cool. And we're doing recording digitally on a USB device into Audacity, and we're recording just one single track recording. And I'll explain how to do multi-track recording as well. So we got a little better. Oh, and I have a Heil PR40, which I'll talk about more in depth later. That's probably one of the most popular high-end podcasting microphones. All right, this was episode 150. You can see we have a whole bunch more crap. On this one, lots more laptops. We've got a phone bridge so we can make telephone calls, which we don't use, which I need to get back to. We've got a solid state recorder. So now we're doing both digital recording and an analog recording way to a solid state. So we've got multiple recordings as well. We've got Larry, we've got John. And I don't know if you can see the beer, but we've got beer. There's a keg right outside that door, which is nice. This was episode 200, which was pretty ridiculous. You can see we still have the PV mixer. A bunch of microphones here, and I'll talk about this. A bunch of microphones on the table with stands doesn't really work out that way, and I'll tell you a better solution for that. That was probably the episode that put me over the edge of having microphones on the table where you're doing a podcast. Okay, so this is Paul.com today. The pictures really don't do it justice because it's kind of spread out in one big corner of my office. But we've got a recording laptop that takes a FireWire connection from a multi-track recorder, which is actually right here. We've got a Google Plus and Skype laptop. We've got a Ustream laptop. We've got another Skype laptop, so we can do 2 simultaneous Skype calls, Google Plus, all coming in and out of our audio setup, as well as broadcast a high-definition feed live. I had to upgrade my internet connection to make this work. I have 30 meg up and 30 meg down from Verizon. Without that, none of this would really work. We also test every I didn't put this in the slide, but we test every guest on the show now beforehand. So we do a test Skype call. We make sure they have a headset. We make sure they're plugged into a wired internet connection, that they can handle video in both ways, and all that stuff. So we test each guest before they come on. We've got actually 4 HDMI cameras that plug into a small television switch. Now, this is kind of interesting. It's one of the things that gives me hope about podcasting. And one thing I've seen over the past 8 years is the prices of stuff have come way down. So you can do way more for way less. In other words, to get into production level TV switching, like you see on a TV show, you see this monitor right here has all the cameras on it. To do that before was like at least 20 grand to get into a TriCaster, to do anything close to TV studio quality. This is a high definition switcher with 4 HDMI inputs for $1,000. So it makes it so people on somewhat of a budget can do actual TV switching. So we've got 4 HDMI cameras. There's a microphone for the AV guy when he wants to use it, the live video display. Power conditioner. Noise will plague you forever. It haunts me in my sleep. The slow like, yeah, that. Try and get that. Adrian shaking.
We're gonna have some of that in these videos.
Yeah, it's horrible. A power conditioner helps some of that, and they're not that expensive. You do need a headphone amp, because anytime you have 5 people in the studio, you're going to split that out and amplify the signal for everyone's headphones. I have a Firewire recorder. It's an 8-channel PreSonus Firewire recorder. That's the workhorse of the podcast, right? It's 8 ins, 8 outs. It's a pretty cool device. That was about $500. I want a better model. The output processors on the Firewire recorder are starting to go. People say that happens to those PreSonus models. So the TV switcher I talked about. We've got a digital to audio converter. That's to get audio into the video. So we take an analog out from the Firewire recorder. We go into this digital audio recorder. It converts it to digital, and it stuffs it in the TV switcher. That's so that the TV switcher actually has special processors on it that match the audio in the video. So there's no lag, so we don't look like we're a 70s Kung Fu movie. As cool as that would be. We can use a preamp for music. I'll talk more about that after. We've got a backup recorder. I don't know if you can see it right here, but there's a little solid state recorder that we use for a backup. We actually make 4 recordings whenever we do a show, and sometimes we like have to go down to just 1 because of whatever problem. So we've got a multi-track recording, we've got a solid state recorder. Ustream records both audio and video, and then we'll run like Audacity on one of those other systems. So we actually make 4 recordings every time we do it. Okay, so now that was the complicated setup, right? Now let's talk about the most basic setup. You get a USB headset, Skype, a laptop, and some software like Audio Hijack Pro on a Mac. I don't remember the Windows equivalent of that. I don't remember who it comes from. If you're interested in doing it on Windows, send me an email. So my experience with USB headsets is that they all suck. I can't find one that I actually like. They either break, like fall apart, literally fall apart on me. They sound like crap, or a combination of the first two. Or they, after an hour, for whatever reason I experienced the drivers, after an hour they just stop working. Or after an hour, they still work, but you sound like a Cylon when you talk. I don't know what programmer wrote those drivers. It's horrible. It's also very difficult to properly adjust the volume, right? Because there's no volume adjustment on the headsets themselves. So not a big fan of USB headsets. I do own 2 of them. This Plantronics 655 is not bad for $28.95. It'll sound pretty decent. The problem is it's tough to control the volume. It'll either be too soft or too loud, not somewhere in between. This is a Bayer Dynamic. It's a German company. It makes really nice audio gear. This is their MMX2. It's $100. It's nice because you can do analog or USB inputs on it, but that's the headset, one of the headsets that will actually do funky things after an hour. So, not quite. The audio quality is good on it, but it stops working after an hour. So in a pinch, this works really well to just have Skype running. It's tough to have a backup recorder when you're doing it this way, unless your setup gets more complicated, but you can get one good recording from this. The problem is also if you're running Skype, some recording software, and you've got a USB headset, if your laptop crashes or your software crashes, you don't have a backup. It's all gone, you gotta start over. And there's not a lot of flexibility. There's no knobs or buttons to adjust things and mute things, so it can be kind of difficult to control. And it's harder to separate out the tracks, to have a track where I'm talking and my guest over Skype is talking. To have those in separate audio tracks to remove the noise independently is much harder with this kind of setup. It's not impossible. There are software plugins that exist to do lots of different things, but again, that's just more software. So one of the things, if you've got just 2 people on your show, it's harder to do with 3 people, is to record on both ends. So if Steve and I were to do a podcast, I would have my USB headset, I would do the recording, Steve would have a laptop, we'd have to be on Skype together, he would have a headset, he would be recording his end, and then at the beginning of the show, we would actually count, right? We'd do an alternating count. How many beers have you had, sir?
I've had 1.5 beers.
Okay, do you think you can count?
How high?
That's a good answer. Let's try going to 5. Alternating counting. 1,
2,
3,
4.
5. Right? So then when I see that audio out, I can sync up the tracks so we're not talking over each other or there's not a lag in between the tracks. So that's the basics of recording on both ends. 3+ people tends to get a little tricky when you're starting to sync 3 or more tracks together. So it works good if you're just 1 or 2 people rather on a podcast. It has the best audio quality. For sure. You still need good quality mics and most importantly preamps, right? Like all those parts coming from China, the one you got to pay attention to the most is the preamps because that's what's going to make you sound good or sound like crap. Okay, speaking of sounding like crap, over my 8 years of podcasting, I've come across brands that usually do not work out well for me. And these are 3 that come right to mind. And it turns out my good friend now, Mark Jr., who's on the Cigar Podcast, used to work at Guitar Center. So we had this very lengthy conversation about all the gear that I've used over the years. And we settled down to stay away from these 3 brands. So Behringer makes kind of okay gear. It's really cheap. My headphone amp is a Behringer, and I just don't like it. It's very noisy. It's not really good at controlling volume. I mean, sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. You have to kind of like kickstart it to get it to work, so not recommended. I had this Tascam for about 2 weeks before it malfunctioned and failed and stopped working on me. I bought another Tascam that worked for 1 recording and then stopped working, so I'm not a big fan of that brand. I think it was this model, Elisa's mixer, which they tout as this is awesome for podcasters. You know, it's got 6 or 8 channels, and you can have some mics, and you can have some laptops plugged into it, and it's got a USB out. You can do multi-track recording. It's horrible. I plugged in one of my mics to it, and it just sounded horrible no matter what I did. So I sent it back, and I bought another mixer, sort of like the PV mixer, and it sounded much better. I'm like, wow, so it really does make a difference. Again, that's the preamps. I like M Audio, PreSonus, Focusrite, and Zoom. I don't have any examples of M Audio, but I will show you examples of the PreSonus and Focusrite, and I use a Zoom H4n for recording as well. So now here's kind of like the next package. So if you want to move beyond the USB headset, here's what I recommend. USB or FireWire interfaces, either one. I believe both of these are USB. It takes analog audio in, it outputs analog audio as well, and outputs everything to FireWire or USB. They typically have these hybrid connectors. They can take XLR or a 1/4-inch jack, which is nice. Very flexible. They sound great. So I just recently got one of these to play around with. Actually, to ship it to Carlos, but with my laptop that puts music into the podcast, it was very noisy. So I hooked up that audio box, PreSonus audio box, and it sounded way better. And again, that's just the preamps. It's a digital connection from my laptop to one of these devices, and then analog out. But they're $150 a piece. You can find kits online too that you can buy one of these devices, headphones, a microphone, a cable, for like a package price. Does someone have a question? No? If you have a question, just shout it out. So they usually have 2 inputs, 2 outputs. And the nice part is you've got knobs to control the volume on stuff. Because sometimes you'll get on Skype and people are like, I can't hear you. And even though the Skype volume slider, which is pretty useless, isn't working for you, you can actually turn it up on a physical knob on one of these devices, which is awesome. The Focusrites are probably going to be what I end up going with, although the Plantronics one works well as well. So this is nice because you can have two people in the same room doing the podcast with headsets on. You can have a mixer, and you can plug a mixer into one of these and record everything off of them, so they're super flexible and they work really well. Okay, this is one thing, I'm not going to get into a whole lot about audio engineering. I'm trying to just include like the hard lessons that I learned, and this was one of them, right? One of my friends who's an audio engineer that did the CCDC event told me, he actually teaches audio engineering. And I'm like, dude, I'm confused, I suck at this. He's like, Paul, think of it like plumbing. He's like, everything relates back in audio when it comes to plumbing. And he's like, think of the difference between mic and line. I'm like, yeah, we have weird problems like that all the time. He's like, look, your mic output is like a garden hose, right? That's how much is coming out of your mic output. He's like, your line output is like a really large diameter pipe carrying water, right? So when they mismatch in either direction, bad things will happen, right? You'll either plug into your recorder, right, and the volume will be really low, and you're like cranking up all the knobs, and you're like, why is that? Or you have the other problem where you're just overdriving everything, right? Because you've got a line mismatch. And I tell you what, all the different gear that I'm going to talk about, it's not always apparent which is a line level output, which is a mic level output. So that will drive you nuts. I think up to the point now where I can really easily identify it and nip it in the bud and put an adapter on it to make the levels match. To use a preamp to go from mic up to line. And just making sure you're using the right inputs and outputs to match these two together. That's probably the most common problem you'll have when you're doing podcasting, is a line level mismatch. So make sure you look for that. It took me a really long time to figure that out and work out the bugs through my entire system. Okay, choosing a microphone. I'll just get right to it. The best microphone for podcasting is a headset. Some people will disagree with me there. I think I have a pretty compelling. Thanks, Jack. I think I have a pretty compelling argument, despite the large, tall, old, gray, bearded man over there. It seems expensive at first, but don't forget, the headsets I'm going to talk about are not USB headsets. They're real audio headsets, XLR connections. They come with headphones, they come with a pop filter, and you don't need to buy cables or stands for them. So factor that into the price. Okay, first some traditional microphones. This is the one that I like because it's cheap, it works great for podcasting. You're not going to notice much difference between the versions of Shure microphones. This one comes with a mic stand clip, a cable, and a case for 40 bucks. So, I mean, we load it up on these. We use them for, if we need to run a mic to something or run it to a guest or whatever. We've got a bunch of these on standby. It's a cardioid dynamic microphone, which I'll talk about. It doesn't pick up a lot of background noise, which is the difference between this and a condenser microphone. So these work great, they sound great. This is the high end. This is your Heil PR40. It's $300. It sounds awesome, though. Like, you sound like a real radio broadcaster. It's like, wow, this is so cool. But I mean, it's 300 bucks. So if you got an ear for it, you can really tell the difference between this and the Shure PG48 on a podcast. Don't forget, you're taking your podcast and you're squashing it down into an MP3 and you're compressing the snot of it. So being able to detect the difference between a $40 microphone and a $300 microphone, yeah, I can tell the difference because I've listened to hours and hours of each one and I know the difference. But for most people, they're really not going to be able to tell the difference. That's why I like the Shure PG48s. Okay, after 8 years, this is what the best microphone headset combination out there. I absolutely love these. Every time I have budget, I go out and I buy more of these so that everyone that ever comes on the show is using one of these. It solves so many problems. The biggest problem when you get together and you do a podcast is, we're talking, but now I want to talk to Steve. And when I talk to Steve, I'm off the microphone. And I hate that. And audio engineering that in post-production is a pain in the butt. With the headset, every time you turn your head, your microphone follows you. That's huge. Even if the sound quality is a lot less than that Shure, a lot less than the Heil PR40, it's worth it just so that the person's on mic all the time. The other nice part is you can click your mouse, you can put your beard down, you can type, and it doesn't pick up on the background noise because it's sitting on your head, right? Unless you're gritting your teeth or chewing gum. The other ambient noises aren't going to get picked up. When you put a microphone down on a stand, right, if I'm going to put the mic here, and I'm going to talk, 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 That's annoying, and that will happen all the time when you put a mic on a stand. Someone will knock their beer glass into it. You know, it's horrible. So the headset takes care of those problems. It travels really easy, right? I don't have to travel with a whole bunch of mic stands and mic clips and all that stuff. I just wrap up this headset and we're good to go. It comes with 3 pop filters, right? So like I could label them for all the guests because we slobber all over them. Most of them smell like cigar smoke and beer and all that stuff. So it does come with extras, so we swap them out every once in a while. Especially Jax, he gets all tangled in his beard. Pretty gross.
Hey, don't tell him I told you this, but he's actually absolutely right about those microphones. They rock.
Yeah.
Don't tell him I said that.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys talked about the mic, 3 pop filters. The boom on it is actually reversible, so you can take it and put it on either side, which is nice, whichever you're more comfortable with. It is comfortable to wear for hours. Jack, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
It's pretty comfy? Yeah, I think they're comfortable. It sounds more than acceptable for a podcast, too. Better than any other headset I've ever tried, okay? So those are all the good things. Now kind of the bad. They're $200 a pop. But again, that sounds like a lot, but you're getting a lot for that money. It rarely goes on sale. Believe me, I look all the time. If this would drop down to 150, like I'd buy 3 or 4 more of them. They never ever come down in price. I mean, and that's usually a sign that you're buying a quality product too. Sometimes the headphone cables tend to have a loose connection, because don't forget, with this you're getting a headphone and a microphone XLR connection in with it as well. So sometimes those connections can loosen up, but a little tape and you're good. Some people that wear glasses, you know, they struggle with headphones, so they might struggle with the headsets if they wear them for hours on end. When we do an all-day podcast, it can get pretty uncomfortable. Yeah, and people will move the microphone away from their mouths because it's not really comfortable to talk with, you know, something like right here, especially while you're smoking and drinking, which is taking the utmost priority over sound quality for a lot of people to come on the show. But you know, they'll move it even like without even thinking about it. They'll just move it away from their mouths and just keep going, just like subconsciously. When something's like in front of your face, you just want to move it out of the way. So I'm not shy about walking up to someone and just being like, oh wait, excuse me, and moving it back up, kind of thing. So I got more comfortable with that. And my my professional audio friends, they'll do that too. They had to mic up people when we were doing the live production for CCDC. And one of the things they told me was like, you can't be shy about making sure your microphone is placed correctly on your guest. They're like, we used to do TV shows or news shows, and like we'd have to mic everyone up, and you just, no matter who they are, Al Roker or whatever, you got to put the microphone where you need it. So don't be shy about that. The lapel microphones are okay. They're expensive. Again, stick with cardioid microphones. Condenser microphones are great if you've got a quiet room with nothing else in it. A laptop will generate enough noise with the mouse, the keyboard, and even the fans that a condenser microphone is going to pick that up. So don't go with those. Go with cardioid mics. The thing about microphones also that the headsets solve, so this is another positive for those headsets, is that pop filters and microphones don't look so hot on video, right? Like you can't really see my not that you'd want to, but you can't really see my face there. Larry's talking and you can see more of Larry, but it's still in front of him like that. The headsets look much nicer on the video. So that's the other reason we go with headsets. Okay. Mixers. Analog mixers are okay. That TV one we have is nice. Mixers that have a USB for multi-track recording are good. This is the one that I recommend. Now, I have to warn you, I haven't actually used this model. However, Allen & Heath makes the best mixers on the planet. They're known as like the mixer company. This mixer is $250. It's a six channel or so, depending on how you count. And you can have 4 microphones in it. It's got a USB output, and the preamps are going to be really good in this Allen & Heath mixer. So again, for what I paid for my PV mixer, I could have got one with a lot more functionality and a USB output. So this is a Z10, and again, it's $250. So I wanted to include a setup that people could use as a guide. So on this setup, and the slide after this tells you what all the pieces and components are and the price tag associated with it. So I wanted to go through a basic setup where you have a mixer. So we'll take it step by step. The first most obvious thing is you've got a mixer, you've got 3 headsets, and their microphones go into the microphone ports, their headphone jacks go into your headphone amplifier. That's an headphone amplifier, it works okay. You plug that into the headphone output on the mixer, it would amplify the signal, everyone can hear, everyone's talking into the mixer, their audio is all getting into the mixer. So you need a quarter inch cable to connect the headphone amp to the mixer. So you can use this as a guide when you're going to buy cables. That's the Zoom H4n recorder. You can connect that a lot of different ways. I like to use the tape out. You see there's these two little RCA jacks right here. That's the tape out, that's where you connect your recording device. So you go RCA to dual quarter inch for left and right. So it's RCA left and right to quarter inch left and right. It goes into the recorder. The recorder is going to need an SD card and it's going to record everything, even as a backup. Even if you've got the USB doing a multi-track, have your recorder doing a backup as well, because sometimes things happen, like last episode. So your Skype connection is going to have an input into the mixer so that everyone can hear the person on Skype. There's also going to be an output from the mixer to your Skype laptop, and that's going to be what's called a mix minus. And that was one of the more difficult concepts to grasp my head around, was that this feed that we're sending back into Skype so that they can hear us when we talk in the studio, they can hear us on Skype, is all of the audio from the mixer except the Skype channel, because otherwise they'd hear themselves. So again, think of it like pipes, right? All this water's flowing in, and water's flowing in from the Skype laptop. When we send that water back onto the Skype laptop, all we're doing is turning a valve so they don't hear themselves. Okay, so that's what they call a mix minus. Another good way to think of it too, right, is you're recording a band, and you've got a mic on the drums, and you've got a mic on the guitars plugged in, and you've got a singer. You want the singer to only hear themselves, so you're going to send the audio back to the singer's headphones that doesn't include the drums and the guitar. So that's why the mixers have that stuff. That's actually what it's for. In podcasting, we're really warping that concept to be able to connect laptops into it. So that's the mix minus. Your music here, you want to inject audio in, right? So it's going to be a 1/8 inch connection on your laptop into a 1/4 inch line in on your mixer. Now, depending on what laptop you're using, you may need an external USB little sound card to do that. But you can use it just from your laptop. Some laptops have a line out, some of them are a mic out, it depends. Okay, wow, that's really short. Wow, I'm gonna run really long. Okay, so, and also you can take an input to this laptop as well and use it as another backup recorder, which is nice. So this is all the equipment that I listed before. The total cost of this is about $12.85. I primarily use Amazon for those prices. You'll get a really good sounding podcast for that amount of money. Let's see, I don't want to spend too much. You can use a compressor limiter gate. That'll help take out noise. They do make really cheap ones, but they mostly sound like crap. You can put telephone calls. This is $400, is probably like the device to put a telephone call into your mixer. So add $400 if you want telephone calls. We just primarily use Skype because it's a lot cheaper. Software, we use Ustream Producer Pro for our live streaming, Audacity, iTunes. Feeder allows us to create and edit our RSS feeds to distribute our podcast. Mars Edit we use for blog posts, GarageBand is for our live multi-track. So what I want to spend most of the rest of the time is, if I had to do it all over again, setup. This is how I would do it, right? This is a Focusrite Scarlett 8x8. It's 8 channels in, 8 channels out, USB recorder. So what's going to happen is this device is going to plug into a laptop that's ideally going to run Apple Logic Pro. What that allows me to do is everything in software. So I can apply compressors, limiters, gates. I can do all kinds of magic things with the audio all in software, including recording all 8 tracks at once. So that's how I would do that. Then to get audio in and out, I put one of these Focusrites on each one and use that as my sound card. That eliminates so much noise, gives you so much more control. Yeah, they're $150 a pop, but this is if I had to do it all over again. So you can actually have one laptop with 2 different sound cards and run 2 different versions of Skype on it. We do Google Plus, so we can have a Google Plus Hangout going, get audio in and out from a Google Plus Hangout. Our Ustream takes an output. This actually goes into an HDMI USB 3.0 device called a Blackmagic Intensity Shuttle. I don't know if you've looked at
I saw, I had some trepidation about whether or not I had the right USB-free chipset to make it work.
Yes, that's a problem. Finding the right USB 3 chipset is tough. But this takes an HDMI in to get the video, and then it takes an RCA connection in to get the audio, dumps all that out in USB 3.0 for Ustream. The music would just be an output from a laptop. With all that stuff connected, I can still have 5 in-studio headsets, which is really cool. So that's if I do it all over again. I didn't put a price tag on that because that would just scare me and you and everyone. So make sure you have a regular schedule. I've had zero success trying to do a podcast like, whenever we have time, we'll do one. Never works. The only thing that's ever worked for me is setting the same time and same day of the week every week. Mike can attest to that as well. Again, I'm still working on the Understanding Spouse. 8 years, we're getting there. It's kind of a drag, right? Every Thursday night for the past 8 years, I've been doing a podcast, which is kind of a bummer, right? Now she's got 2 kids every Thursday night, and it's just the monotony gets, of every week having to do that is really hard on a lot of people that do regular podcasts. So it's not easy. Yeah, like the NFL sucks for having games on Thursday nights now. What's up with that? I got to tickle the Patriots game. Holidays, birthdays, baby births, anniversaries, all must be rescheduled. So keep that in mind when you pick your regular time. A website. We're working on a new website, which is, as everyone knows, really driving me nuts. Where's Charlie? Is Charlie still here? We chose WordPress for our new site. How's that? Can we hire you to hack it before everyone else? That'd be awesome. So yeah, we're still working on that. I mean, they go hand in hand. You're going to want a place for people to go. Specifically, we use a wiki for all our show notes, and I can't tell you how wonderful that's been. That's the most popular area of our website. A lot of people do Google searches, and they land on our wiki. So that's great to have that archive of everything. And a lot of the interns are putting a lot of time in the wiki to make it a complete archive. You can basically go back into almost any show we've ever done, find the audio, the video, the notes, the technical details of every segment inside of our wiki, which is really cool. So, because that's the thing about podcasting, it's tough to have an archive. So, yes.
You can also say if you want people to be able to find your podcast, Google doesn't index audio necessarily, but having a big blob of text that describes what the audio is about helps a lot with search engine optimization.
And unless people are searching in iTunes, they might not find you. So having a wiki with all your stuff is great. We distribute our content in we use a lot of different providers to get our content out there. We've got Libsyn, which hosts all of our audio. That's the best deal going. I mean, you can host tons of audio with tons of gigabytes of bandwidth off Libsyn for like $75 a month or something like that. We do pay a lot more in a lot of other hosting scenarios. We use Blip.tv and YouTube to distribute our videos. They're also archived on Ustream, which is what we use for live streaming. YouTube is the only one that's free here. LibTV, you're going to need a pro account to really make it worth your while. Same thing with Ustream. If you don't want to have ads, you got to pay Ustream. What is it? Is it $100 a month now for Ustream?
I haven't used Ustream. BlipTV I used to use way back when that's the free version, but unfortunately it would keep failing constantly. And then sometimes it would work, sometimes it would work with the same freaking video, so I gave up on it.
You know the deal is with Blip, if they like you, things will work in Blip, and if you're an established show. If you're just like starting out, they hate you.
Gotcha.
So, nice to have. Pants are always, optional, I guess. We wish we would have required them for Larry for that picture, as well as lots of other clothing. Sponsors. So how do I get sponsors? For podcasters, this is the tough thing. The first question sponsors are going to ask you is who listens. And if you're just running a podcast, you're going to be like, oh, people download it. And then some of them send me an email, and it's cool. So to answer that question, what we've done is we do webcasts and we have a newsletter. We're identifying who listens to our show to give that demographic and geographic information to potential sponsors. And that's really, if I had to tell you one thing about sponsors in the short time I have left, that would be it. So for a slogan, we came up with Hack Naked. Our listeners threatened to revolt if we changed the slogan. So now we're stuck with it. So when you choose a slogan, choose it wisely. Otherwise, you could be stuck with something like Hack Naked. So a logo is a nice thing to have. So someone made this Paul.com logo for us when we first got started. And as we've gone through time, everyone comments about what an awesome logo is because it can be changed, it can be different formats, it's easy to print, it's got all those wonderful things that logo designers tell you that a logo should have. And we got it for, I think we sent them a t-shirt for it. So thanks to Craig Stepp for creating our logo. The Stogie Geeks logo, I put it on a logo bid. I want to say you can set how much you want to pay someone for your logo, and then a bunch of people create a bunch of different logos for your show, and you get to pick the winner, and then you pay that person, and they send you the logo. I think I paid $300 for the Stogie Geeks logo, so I'm pretty happy with that. Again, that site was logobid.com. I also have bought custom music over the years from podcast themes. Podcastthemes.com, I think is the name of the website. If you're looking for it and you can't find it, just send me an email. Tell them I sent you over there because I bought music for 3 different podcasts at least once, sometimes 2 or 3 times from him. So like he knows me. I refer people to him all the time. He's super nice. You can either pay to use his music or you can buy it outright and own all the rights. So I own all the rights to all podcast shows and music. You can find royalty-free music online that you can use, which is great. If you run clips of copyrighted music, you're probably okay inside of a podcast, especially if you're just playing a clip of it. When you put it up to YouTube, YouTube has this special super secret spy software, probably developed with the NSA. It goes, oh my God, your video contains copyrighted music. I'm like, how the frick did you know that? And it'll flag your video, and you say, yeah, I still want to put my video out there, and then they could pull it. Most of the time they haven't, so I guess it depends on, I don't know what makes the determination of whether to pull it or not. So we interviewed the guys from Cycle Override last night, and at the end I played the Bicycle song by Queen, which was good, I got a kick out of that. But that video will probably be flagged on YouTube when we post it. We try and have content guidelines. You know, the podcasts are regulated by the FCC, so you can say whatever the heck you want on the podcast. I strongly recommend you at least curse every once in a while, just because you can, because it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So we aim for a PG-13 rating. Sometimes we fall short or go way beyond that. But we also set rules too. Like we don't talk on our security podcast, cigar podcast. We don't talk politics or religion. If you want to have a podcast about politics or religion, that's great too. But I didn't want to mix the topics, and it kind of helps set things in the right direction. So that's just you know, we have that rule on our shows. And that's it. So you can find the Paul.com podcast there, Hack Naked TV, Stogie Geeks, and then I do the Tenable podcast every week as well. So those are links to all my podcasts, and you can email me, paul@hacknaked.tv. Do I have time for questions, or no, you're kicking me out?
5 minutes for questions.
5 minutes for questions. Shoot. Who's got questions? Question.
Yeah, why don't you use Google Analytics or something like that on your podcast?
Yeah, so you can put Google Analytics on your website, in your RSS feed. Unfortunately, it doesn't get in the actual audio. So it is good. We do have Google Analytics on the new site, throughout the new site. So yeah, that's a great suggestion. That will give you some measure of who's visiting your website, not necessarily who's listening to your podcast, right? Most of our listeners, 80% plus, go through iTunes and download our podcast, which means I'm only collecting information from those people that Libsyn is giving me about where they are geographically. It doesn't tell me who they are. Sponsors will ask for things like, well, what job titles do people have that listen to your show? I'm like, I don't collect that from my podcast. You register for one of our webcasts or sign for a newsletter, I may ask you for that information. You know, I don't want to know necessarily your address or your phone number, but tell me where you work, what your title is, and you know, are you a decision maker, or just some generic information about you helps me get sponsors. Question?
Not a question, a comment on
Yeah.
that. From listening to the podcast, just say at the beginning of it, sometime during this podcast, we're going to give you the URL to the free download. Listen, you'll get the download.
Right.
Then you get all the, you can track all who downloads the stuff, and just make it random.
Yeah.
Don't always make it the last 3 minutes, because then people just switch the end.
Right. Yeah, you gotta, that's a good point. You gotta put advertisements, or if you're telling people to do something, at different points in the show. If it's at the same point in the show, every show, people just fast forward through it, or not listen to the last 3 minutes, like
Right,
you said.
so put
Yeah.
your download URL somewhere in the middle, and
Yeah.
then you can figure out how many people are listening to it how many people go back 2 years later, which is your
Right. Yeah, so Libsyn gives me the statistics of how many people download previous episodes, and it's really frightening. And that's one of the best selling points to your potential sponsors. Look, you know, I listed the downloads, I got it on a slide, I listed the download statistics from our shows that were done in 2006. And how many, it's like 2,000 downloads of the shows from 2006 last month. So when you buy an ad on our show, people are gonna hear it, you know, for a really long time. So that's one of the best selling points. Unfortunately, that alone doesn't help you get sponsored. I wish it did. Any other questions? Yes?
Is Twitchy in jail yet?
Twitchy is not in jail. Twitchy was a member of the show, and he is not in jail. He works at an undisclosed location for an undisclosed company right now. But he's still alive and doing security work. That's all I can tell you. Yes?
You may not want to answer this, but I want to ask about the cash flow from your podcast.
Mhm.
Do you break even? Do you make supplemental income from this, or do you lose money on it?
Yeah, we pretty much break even. I would say I haven't really gone back and done all the accounting, to be honest with you. I'd imagine that we probably break even.
It's all the beer.
Yeah, the beer and cigars probably puts us in the red. But if you take those out, we probably break even. Some things that help, someone wants to sponsor our bandwidth, which is about $350 a month. So, yeah, it's a hefty price tag. That's on a good day. You know, there's probably a service I'm missing in there as far as bandwidth goes. So, yeah, we probably break even. So. Any other questions? Adrian?
What is best in life, Conan?
Repeat the question.
What is best in life, Conan? Everyone? Everyone?
Beer.
For a drink ticket, who knows? Yes.
Cross your enemies, see them driven before you get the lamentations of the women.
Yes.
No, that's
Get
not right. You said you used the W.
Out.
It's
You get half a
Vimin.
ticket.
Vimin. But we'll let it.
We'll let it slide. Any other comments, questions?
Have you estimated how much beer has been drunk on the podcast?
I did. You know, the NSA built that facility in Utah, and they had to come up with a new number to count how much storage they had. That's probably what we need to come up with for as much beer as we've drank on the show. Any other questions? Okay, grab a beer, put lots of money in the tip jar for Devin. Thanks for Devin for giving up her Friday to come down here on her day off. So, thank you.